So Ali, as a teenager, creeps to the fence of this house, climbs up and looks over, and in the back garden was a large group of people, all dressed in white gowns, holding hands, circling round and round as if they are chanting some sort of ritual or seance sort of thing.
Hello and welcome back to Hey, That's Weird, the paranormal podcast that takes your weird stories and makes them even weirder with strange sounds and ambient tones. Big thanks to Frankie, Esther, Herman, Piers, Billy, Jess, Kelly, Danielle, Hillary and Juanita for their engagement on the socials this week. I read every single message in every review and try to respond to them. If you have fallen under the radar, I apologise. I'm just a little overwhelmed by how much the show is being played these days, so I'm just trying to keep up with everything. My storyteller this week is Matt, from London in the UK. Matt is a self-confessed skeptic, which makes his story even stranger. I saw a lot of similarities in myself with Matt as far as belief in the paranormal goes. We are both people who try to scientifically and logically explain things before we jump to a paranormal explanation. Personally, I think this is a responsible way to be. That being said, I'm absolutely open to everything. One of my favourite podcasts to listen to is Danny Robbins' Uncanny. If you're a fan of it, then you already know the host, Danny, opens up the floor to believers and skeptics alike for all his stories, and I think it creates some really great discussion. Anyway, I'm rambling. I'll let Matt tell his own story in his own words before I say too much and spoil it. I hope you guys enjoy it. Without further ado, Matt, let's get weird.
Hi, my name is Matt. I live in London in the UK. I've lived here for about 7 years, and before moving to London I lived in Manchester for about 10 years. My story takes place in a house that I moved into with some friends in 2013. I want to preface this with saying that I don't believe in ghosts, don't believe in that kind of stuff, but I have always been drawn to weird stories, and I'm always interested in these kind of things. I guess I want to believe, but I don't. But these weird stories obviously is what's drawn me to your podcast, and I thought I'd contact you because of this strange experience I had. So because I don't believe in ghosts, I almost think that it makes my story more interesting, because I know I experienced these things for about a year and other people experienced them as well. So 2013, I moved into a house in Manchester with two of my friends, Joe and Mark. It's in Fallowfield in Manchester, which is kind of the student area of the town, of the city. And it's kind of a standard, quite nice townhouse, 2 floors as you'd expect, which is not the case in London, but in Manchester you get a full house. So I was at the time working in bars. I was managing a bar that was also a music venue and a restaurant, so my hours were quite crazy at the time. Mark was a postman, and Joe, I believe, was studying for his PhD. So we moved into this house, and the layout of the house is quite important. So you would go in the front door, there'd be a little tiny porch, and then when you went through the next door, you would be in the house on the downstairs landing. On the left is the stairs that go straight up and then curl round to the right for the upstairs level. The first door on your right is the living room, and then the second door on the right would be Mark's bedroom, and the room in front of you walking through the front door would be the quite long kitchen that went out to the back garden. If you went upstairs, it's a small landing, sort of a semicircle landing with 4 doors going around. So the first on the left was the spare bedroom at the start that we didn't use. And then going around clockwise was Joe's room next, and then my room, and then the bathroom. So we moved into this house, I think in the summer of 2013, and immediately we had experienced lots of noises in the house, lots of banging, which would kind of happen throughout the day, throughout the night. There'd be long periods with it not happening, and then it would return, bang, bang, bang. And just to point out that this is a semi-detached house, so that means on one side of the house there is another house, but on the other side, through the wall there is nothing. It's just garden. And sometimes the noises were on that side quite a lot of the time, actually. Another thing which sounds, as someone who is skeptical of the paranormal, this sounds a little bit weird to say, but we had all independently, the three of us had all said that we felt kind of bad feelings, bad vibes, specifically from certain rooms in the house. And they were the spare room on the top floor, the bathroom on the top floor, and downstairs, the living room and Mark's room, which were next to each other. The banging and noises happened quite often, and I remember once we had quite a few people round. There was about 10 of us, and we were all sat in my room because it was the biggest room of the house, and it had like a weird sofa in it. And most people went out. I think I had work the next day, so I didn't go out, but they all went out to a bar or something, and just me and one friend stayed. And we'd been talking about the things that had been happening in the house. And I remember saying to him, I bet you if we're silent for 5 minutes, we will hear it. And literally 5 seconds later, there was a bang, bang, bang on the landing wall, and we were the only ones home. No one was there. We went out and looked at it. It seemed to come from kind of the area above the stairs on the wall when you look out down the stairs. There was another time when we were all home and we all heard a noise from the kitchen, and all on our own sort of found ourselves, all of us, in the kitchen together. And the fridge, big old, fridge and freezer unit had moved out from the wall and was sticking out at an angle, had come out from the wall. Another time, Mark came out of his room shouting because his acoustic guitar, which was standing in a guitar stand in the corner of the room, had suddenly been strummed and the strings rang out. He was a very tidy guy, so it's kind of unlikely that anything had been moved and would have hit it. So it was very, very unusual. And these things kind of built up over, a few months of us being there. I've been in touch with him recently, and just to see if there's anything that I'd forgotten about some of the things that had happened. And he said there was one time I wasn't in, and his bedroom was directly underneath mine, and he heard a massive crash coming from my room. We were in a band at the time, so there's a lot of musical instruments around the house. He assumed that a stack of guitar amps had fallen. It was that loud. Guitar amps had fallen, and like something really, really heavy had like crashed on the ground. And he ran upstairs and went into my room, and nothing was on the floor. Nothing had fallen. We couldn't explain it. There was another incident where Joe's girlfriend at the time, who's now his wife, Bex, she was in the bathroom with the door shut on her own, and in the mirror she saw the curtain of the shower move in the mirror. So all these things were going on. At the time, I was having quite a bad period of sleep paralysis in this house, which was obviously down to my wild hours in my work. Sometimes I'd be working till 4 a.m, and sometimes I'd be in work at 7 or 8 to sort of open up, because we were the latest open bar in that whole town. So we had to be, I think we stopped serving alcohol at 2:30 in the AM. And then obviously you've got your close down and stuff after. So obviously my sleep pattern was just all over the place, and I was having sleep paralysis. I'd been having sleep paralysis for a number of years, and because of it, I had put quite a lot of research into it and like sort of looked into it quite a lot, ways to stop it and stuff like that. So I used to have it maybe, I don't know, once a week or something like that. But when I look back at my sort of time of having sleep paralysis, which I don't have at all anymore, the time of my life when I had it the most was by far the year that I lived in this house. It was, at one point, I was having it every single day. Every single day I would sleep and it would end up in sleep paralysis, where I would be unable to move and unable to breathe, and eventually you kind of snap out of it. And that was how it would happen before, and it was how it was happening in this house, but it was so much more regular. I was also having like really, really lucid dreams at that point, really, really vivid lucid dreams. So I'd done a bit of research into sleep paralysis, and anyone who's looked into it before will know that there's this thing called old hag syndrome, which is where someone hallucinates that this old woman creeps into their bed over a very long period of time. Like, loads and loads of people have reported having this during their sleep paralysis. I had never had this before, and I was very, very, very much not wanting it to happen. I'd gone to sleep in the day. I'd shut my door, I went to sleep, and I woke up and I could see that my door slowly opened. And it was as if a young woman was walking into my bedroom and very, very slowly made her way round the sofa to the head of the bed. It felt like it took ages. And it was as if she was then levitating above my bed, mimicking the pose that I was like holding in the bed, which was, I'm a sort of a front side sleeper, so I was sort of on my chest with my head out and my arms and legs splayed. And it was like she was mimicking the pose from above, and she slowly lowered down to my body, and as soon as she made contact with my body, I woke up. Very, very, very strange experience. Another one which I personally find this one even stranger, because I've never had anything like this before. And this one was that I was sleeping one time in the house, and I suddenly woke up because it was like someone had crept into my room and shouted my name right into my ear, which woke me up immediately, and my ear was ringing and like hurting, as if somebody had genuinely shouted into my ear. It was very, very strange. There are a couple of funny moments here that happened in the house. One of them is the part of the story that I tell quite often. I don't tell this story often at all. I've been telling it quite a lot recently in the build up to me sharing it on here, but other than that, there's some people close to me that I've never told this before, and they were very surprised to hear the story recently. But the one bit I do tell is that after about living there for about 6 months, we had another friend move in, who was our friend called Will. And Will was supposed to move to China, but he had ruptured his Achilles playing football, so he wasn't able to go to China to do the work that he was supposed to do. So he needed a place to live for 6 months. So we said, we've got this spare bedroom at the top of the landing that you're very welcome to move into. And so he did. Will moves in, and I help him get all of his stuff in. It was only me and him in the house at that time, and I had work in the evening. I remember sitting down and telling Will about all the sort of activity that's been happening in the house, things that people think they've seen. Sometimes across the landing, it feels like maybe someone's moving. There's noises in the middle of the day. There's noises in the middle of the night. I've probably told him about the sleep paralysis stuff. And then I was like, really sorry, Will, but I've got to go to work. And Will was very, very scared. And I got in the shower to get ready to go to work. And I thought it would be very funny to write the words "get out" in the shower glass door in the condensation, thinking if this ever happens, this might be funny. Completely forgot about it and went to work. And about 3 hours into my shift, Will rings me. And when I answer the phone, he is in the back garden wearing just a towel because he has stood in the shower with his leg all wrapped up with casts and stuff. And slowly in the condensation, the words "get out" had appeared in the shower door, and he'd absolutely bottled it. And ran outside and called me, where I explained it was a prank. Another thing that was very strange, which I wasn't sure whether to include or not, is Mark and I went to a music festival and we came back very dirty and very tired. And when we got back, there was a huge tree in the front garden. And at some point while we've been away, on this very public road as well, people must have seen it, but the tree in the front garden had fallen directly towards the house and completely fallen down, and had fallen so close to the house that the leafy part of the top of the tree was completely blocking the door, to the point that we actually couldn't get in the house. And in that part of the tree there was a wasp's nest, so it was this chaos of branches and wasps blocking us from getting into the house, which I've got photos of. But yeah, I don't know if I'm blaming paranormal activity for that or if it's just Manchester Council planning. So this goes on for a long time. We kind of get used to the noises, to be honest, and it becomes a bit of a kind of jokey thing with our friends. And, you know, we'd see them and they'd kind of ask us how the ghosts are doing and stuff. And I'm sure more things happened at this point, but, you know, so many things have happened here that we've probably forgotten a few of them. The major thing that I always remember about these stories is I was, as I say, working very late nights a lot of the time. One night was working, it was quite empty, so not many people around. We had this regular customer called Ali, who was a music producer. I think he worked for Sony. And he had just moved back in with his mum after living away, I think, and he'd moved back in with her in this area of Fallowfield. He worked through the afternoon and the night, recording artists, and then he would sometimes come to the bar for like a mid-work break, which would for him be like 1 a.m. And he'd have a couple of beers and he'd go off and then he'd mix the tracks, etc. So this night he stayed. You know, everybody who worked there kind of knew him a little bit. He was a regular face. He would come in on his own. And he stayed that evening while I broke down the bar and you know, counted the money, etc. And I think we might have stayed and had a couple of beers together. I can't really remember, but we left together anyway. For the first time ever, we'd never sort of walked home together. We left the bar and we were just sort of chatting, and I was like, oh, which way do you live? This way. Oh, so do I. My house was about 10 minutes away from the bar. We were walking in the same direction. We're walking home and I'm about to turn right onto the road where I live, and he stops and says,
do you live down here?
And I say yes, and he says,
can we just walk down this road and I'm going to point a house at you? I don't want you to tell me where you live.
So I don't tell him where I live. We walk down the street, my street, and we get to my house and he points at my house and says,
that one.
And I'm like, yeah, that's where I live. And he can't believe it. He can't believe that this is the house that I live in. And he says,
you know, when you're young and you have a haunted house of your childhood on your estate, this is the house. This is the haunted house of my childhood.
And I say, well, you know, something along the lines of, that's really interesting because we've had quite a lot of weird stuff happen in this house. And he was like,
I know this is really strange, but do you mind if I come in?
And I'm like, yeah, it's fine. You know, I can show you the inside of this house. So we go in. First of all, he's like,
oh my God, all the furnishings are the same. All the cupboards are the same. This is crazy.
And he actually starts taking photos of things. And he especially was interested in the fireplace. And I think there is a story there that I can't remember, something about him having some kind of weird activity with the fireplace. Because basically, Ali had grown up on this estate. As I say, he'd moved back in with his mum. And when he was a kid, this house was owned by a woman who lived there childless. I think she might have lived there with her elderly mother. I can't quite remember. But during the summer, the woman would have her nephew over to stay for the summer. And he was the same age as Ali, and they would be like summer pals throughout the summer holiday. They'd hang out. He said any time that they went to the house, there was always really bad feelings, especially from the spare room upstairs, the bathroom, and the downstairs living room. Because at the time, the living room and what was now Maiky's room was just one big living room. And at some point, somebody had built a wall in the middle to turn it into 2 rooms. But these were the rooms that he had pointed out. So yeah, me and Ali are sort of walking around the house and he's taking photos and I'm telling him about things that have happened in the house. And he said the weirdest thing that happened was that a few years later, after sort of hanging out with this kid a few years in a row, I think he was sort of a late teenager at this point. He was walking home, and he could hear from the back garden of this house loads of noises and like a light coming from it. It was like quite late at night. So Ali, as a teenager, creeps to the fence of this house, climbs up and looks over, and in the back garden was a large group of people, all dressed in white gowns, holding hands, circling round and round as if they are chanting some sort of ritual or seance sort of thing. So Ali was like gobsmacked to be back in this house and seeing the same things that he remembered from his childhood. So yeah, I don't believe in ghosts, but I do know that I experienced all of these strange things in this sort of year period. And as I say, I don't often tell most of this to people, but I do quite often tell the time where I forced Will out of our house just wearing a towel because I wrote "get out" in the shower door.
I've rarely heard a story with so much activity going on. The footsteps, the banging, the sleep paralysis, and multiple witnesses. This really needed some explaining. So what did Matt think it was? After years of having to think about it, was he open to the possibility that this was paranormal? Here's what he had to say.
I can't. This is the thing, is that in general I kind of disagree with the idea that they logically could exist. But as I say, I kind of want to believe in things like that because it makes the world a little bit more interesting. I can't explain a lot of the things that happened. And I remember while we were living there being sort of like, this is crazy. Like we're kind of living in one of those situations. Now it's like it's still happening and it's going on. But this is why this story's always stuck out, is that I can't explain the stuff that happens, things like the fridge coming out. Like I remember us being stood round the fridge and kind of laughing about it because it was so wild. And the noises, I can't explain it. And I kind of, there's a part of me that wants to be like, I lived in a haunted house. Like that's how I want to sell the story. But there's always, that skeptical part of me that's like, that's not how you sell this story. You sell this story as, I lived in this house for a year and it was absolutely mad.
One thing I'm trying to do more on Hey That's Weird is include witnesses from the stories being told. Thankfully, Matt was able to talk Mark and Joe into getting involved here too. This is Mark's recollection of living in that weird house in Fallowfield in Manchester.
To sum up living in that house, right from the start, I think we all thought something's not quite right and we all felt a bit uneasy being there. And then from the experiences that we had together and individually, it was quite clear that something wasn't right. And myself, being a postie at the time, I'd come home early in the afternoon, and when I was there on my own, I always felt like I wish someone else was there. I wish like Matty or Joe would come home, because it did feel very uneasy and just a weird vibe when I was there on my own. So then when Matty told us about the stuff that happened with Ali, it kind of all made sense. It was like, oh, okay, this is why this is happening.
And here are some of Joe's memories.
Possibly not the most reliable witness, certainly got a lot of hazy memories from back then, but I do remember anyone who came round, whether they just came for a drink or after a party or stopped over, something would happen. There'd be a strange noise, usually a banging, or something would move for no good reason. The other memory that sticks in my mind is being in that kitchen, either making tea or doing the pots, looking out on the back window at the garden, which when we moved in was just a fairly normal garden, but then we quickly got bored of it and never went out there and didn't do any maintenance. So after a year or so, the vegetation was like to waist level, wasn't it? And it was dimly lit. I put a hammock between two trees at one point. So after a year, there was just a hammock swaying in the wind in this dimly lit, rainy garden, overgrown with all this shrubbery and stuff. I mean, this is maybe more a story about neglect of a garden, but it definitely made for a spooky looking scene.
Lastly, on Hey That's Weird, I offer all storytellers a chance to plug or promote something they're passionate about. Here's what Matt had to say.
if we'd done this at the time, I would be promoting my band. So I think me and Maiky would want to shout out Blooms from Manchester, but we don't really play together anymore. So the only thing I can think worthwhile pushing at the moment is the Medical Aid for Palestinians charity, which is at almustfatrust.org. That's, I think, the more important thing to be promoting at the moment.
And that does it for episode 12 of Hey That's Weird. Massive thanks to Matt for sharing his experience. If you have a story that you want to get off your chest, then reach out to me via heythat'sweirdpodcast@gmail.com or on Instagram @heythat'sweirdpodcast. If you're enjoying the show, truly the coolest thing you can do for me is tell a friend about it. The more people that listen, the more people will come forward with their stories, and it's a spooky win-win for everyone. Okay, until next time, stay weird.